Hello, and welcome to Tell Me About Your Book. My name is John Christian. Today, my guest is self-published author Brady Goodwin Jr. He has written a book about a journey he has been on, and some even consider it controversial. Well, if that sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned. Hi, Brady. Welcome to the show.
What's up, John? Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I understand you wrote a book that is about gaslighting. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the title of the book is Let There Be Gaslight. It is a play on Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, I believe it is, where in the beginning God speaks and says, "Let there be light." And so it's actually taking a look at the Bible's presentation of God, the Bible's presentation of human history, and looking at the current claims of certain apologists and Christian, even evangelical pastors and theologians, and sort of asking the question, are we being told the truth about creation and the fall and redemption, three major categories in the Bible?
What was the purpose for you to write this book?
It was sort of therapeutic. Because I became a Christian in the early 90s and spent the last 3 decades as a traveling musical missionary doing Christian hip hop music, so rap music, written, hundreds of verses and songs, and even written a couple of books in the past, just expressing my faith in the most creative ways that I can. And then around 2014, I began a process of deconversion, which involves some deconstructing. And so the purpose of the book was sort of just to flesh out all of that. But then also, I think the purpose was to sort of maybe warn or alert my Christian community that there's a conversation coming that I think if we're not savvy, if we're not aware, there are going to be people in the conversation basically gaslighting us. So the more we find out about human origins, the more it challenges the Bible's story. And then when you go to your trusted spiritual leaders and say, hey, science is saying this, but the Bible says this, what do I do with that? If you're not really aware of the conversation, I think your spiritual leaders will be able to say things to you that may comfort you so that you're able to still believe what you believe, but you won't be being told the truth. And so I think the purpose of the book was to kind of just give people a heads up. Hey, there's a conversation coming you need to be ready for, but then also be aware when you start hearing certain things, there may be more to the story. You might want to investigate. My book can kind of serve as a gateway to sources to kind of check out what are people saying and how should we look at these things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess you cover some of your deconstruction process within the book.
Yeah.
Being that you had been a Christian rapper before, and kind of well known in your circles, when this book, or that you declared yourself to no longer be a Christian, what was that like for you?
Yeah, good question. It was, I don't know. It was something that I was determined to lean into, because when I was going through the process behind closed doors, I had no one to look to kind of pattern myself after. And it was scary. It was depressing. It was stressful. But then I said, if I'm going to actually go public with this information, I'm not going to shy away from any bit of the process. I'm not going to hide or delete my Facebook memories when they come up and they're very, Christian and very outspoken. I'm going to discuss and I'm going to embrace like that. That's who I was. It's what I believed. And here's where I am now. So it too was a therapeutic process. I think, like I said, I leaned into all the twists and turns. I said, I'm here for this ride. And so it was actually good for me. I like being able to be open and be honest and be transparent about where I am. I think whatever comes as a result of honesty, I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm. How has it affected your music? Are you still rapping?
Well, see, the good thing, I guess, maybe good, because people still ask me, hey, are we going to get any new music from you from this experience? But I'd stopped rapping really around 2012, 20, I think I did my last album in 2014. And then I did a couple of features, maybe 2017, 2018. But going through the process of deconversion, so to be honest, I really only ever learned how to put raps together. And not to toot my own horn, but I was extremely good at putting words together. I like wordplay. I like, imagery and alliteration and all that kind of stuff. But I only got good at it because I was so impressed by the Bible's message, by the gospel message, that I felt it deserved a great effort to tell it and to retell it. So that's why I got good at rapping. Having deconverted, I no longer really have a reason to utilize that skill. So when I wrote my book, I think I did tap into some of my wordsmithery, some of my creativity. But outside of that, in terms of putting it in rhyme form, I don't really have that drive anymore because I only got good at it for one reason. So no, I haven't done any music having deconverted, and I don't know that I will.
How long is your book?
About 350 pages.
Oh, substantial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, I went in.
Oh yeah.
So I was an academician. So I wasn't just, this is not just like me thinking my way through things. This is me interacting with some of my former professors, and I probably cited over 300 books in my book as I'm debating with Christian scholars. So yeah,
I see.
it's substantial.
Academician. So that means you have a discipline in something. What would that be?
Yeah. So I did an undergraduate degree at a Bible college, and the degree wasn't really specified. But then I went to Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, which is probably like one of the premier seminaries in the country for Reformed theology. Sort of was the bastion, the last bastion against theological liberalism as it began to creep in the early 1900s. So even though it's a Presbyterian school, many other denominations got their weaponry for how they were going to deal with theological liberalism from Westminster. So I got a master's degree, Master of Arts in Theology from Westminster in 2015.
I kind of want to hear you rapping, not now, but I think I'm going to want to look up. I want to hear
because it's all on YouTube. Whenever I want to hear my music, I go to YouTube. I don't even own it. So
cool, because I like your voice.
Oh, wow, cool.
Talk to me about your podcast. I know that you have one.
Yeah, so it's called right now it's called Pull Up. It's kind of a urban slang for just people coming to confront one another. It's me and two friends actually. So when I dropped my deconversion video, I had an old friend who I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. Out of the blue, he reached out to me on Twitter. Said, hey, you got to call me. And I knew he had deconverted 10 years ago. That's why I hadn't heard from him. I get on the phone with this guy, and he just goes on for about 2 hours just talking about having deconverted, and for the last 10 years, having had no one to talk to. He's just been kind of secluded because he lost his Christian community. So me and this guy, that was early February. We basically have spoken every day since February of 2022, as he's just kind of, coming out of his cocoon. And when I released my book, Let There Be Gaslight, probably about 30 different Christian apologists, urban apologists, they got the book, and they each took a chapter and made these response videos to my book, just basically kind of trying to detract from the book. And so this old friend of mine who I've been talking to every day, he's watching these videos about people talking about my book. Like, oh, they're misquoting you here. Oh, they're taking you out of context here. Oh. And then another guy who designed the cover of the book, he's watching the videos like, man, they're misrepresenting your book. We need to respond. So it took me a week to make one response video. It was about 3 hour long video where I'm responding to just one of the videos. And there's like every day there's a new video. People are talking about the book. And so these two guys are like, hey, it can't just be you responding to all these people. It's you against like, the world at this point. You need help. And so I had been trying to get this guy, the guy that I had been speaking to every day in 2022. I had been trying to get him to to join me on a podcast for months, but he was determined to remain anonymous. He did not want it to become more known than it already was that he was a non-Christian and an atheist. He was of the mindset that if because we live in a to a large degree what you might could call a Christian country, predominantly Christian country, he's of the mindset that if Christians find out that you're an atheist, they will think the worst about you. They will think that you're wicked. They will think that you're, just dishonest and just all kinds of things. And so he didn't want that to bleed into his normal life. And so he said, I won't do a podcast with you. He denied me all year long. But then when he saw the way people were responding to my book, finally he was like, okay, look, you need help. Me and the guy who did your cover for your book, we want to help you refute some of these response videos to your book. But I have one condition. He said, I have to remain anonymous. So we kind of we worked it out so that he now, he's kind of like in this witness protection program kind of image. That's why you don't see his face. But all that to say, it's me and these two friends of mine. We started off just responding to responses to my book. And then having concluded that, we just continue to meet once a week just to discuss. And it's kind of therapeutic for them as well, because both of them left the faith about 10 years ago and didn't look back. They're not like me. They didn't write a book. They didn't go try to speak to other Christians about, hey, this isn't true. They went on and lived their life. So now for the first time in 10 years, they're turning back around to look at the faith that they held deeply, very deeply. They were bona fide. They were in the fold. Now they're turning back for the first time in 10 years to look back at the faith that they held. And so it's therapeutic for them, but it also is providing listeners with the thing that none of us had during our deconversion. None of us had a blueprint or a roadmap or someone to look at and say, how did you think through? How did you work through this? So the podcast is all that. It's responding to responses to my book. It's just, it's former Christians discussing their deconversion. It's a roadmap. It's a signpost. It's all of that. It's all of the above.
Yeah. And it's and I've watched your shows. You only have a few of them, but they're presented in a very intelligent way, and it's peaceful and firm. And
appreciate that.
It's it's a quality show. Show. But you raised a few points there that I've been curious about. I live in Canada. I was a Christian, and then I stopped being one at age 46, thereabouts, and no one batted an eye except my immediate family. But I just went to work and nothing changed. I get the feeling, I could be wrong, but I get the feeling there's parts of the United States where it's not good for someone to turn their back on Christianity and then declare themselves to be an atheist. It actually becomes, for some cases, dangerous for them. That's the feeling I get.
I wouldn't have thought so until I'm watching this guy who's on my podcast as he tries to walk circumspectly and on eggshells, and he's careful to not have it bleed into his life. It forced me to think about why would someone have to do that? And I guess I didn't realize, just how intertwined someone's faith can be to the rest of their life. But on the podcast we recorded just last night, I think I confessed. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but I think I spent about a good 3 or 4 years before my deconversion detangling my life from my faith. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, but I was sort of making it so that if I did deconvert, nothing would change. So I went from being a full-time minister to teaching in a very secular job. I went from serving very faithfully at my church to just attending faithfully and serving in ways that if I were to vanish, nothing would change. So my income and even my community was no longer dependent on the Christian community, so that if I did deconvert, because I didn't know that that was coming, but it was almost like just in case, if I did deconvert, I wouldn't feel it. But I've had Christians who, when I released my deconversion video in January of 2022, my inbox, my private messages on Facebook began to fill up with people saying things like, hey, I see you went to Westminster on the East Coast. I went to Westminster on the West Coast. I had the same experience. I'm a pastor and I can't let my congregation know that I no longer believe.
Wow.
Or I'm a parent. I've raised my kids on this and I can't let my children know that I'm no longer a believer. Or I'm a Christian rapper
Mm-hmm.
and I can't let my fans know or my family know because I told my wife, but we live with my in-laws, and I can't let anyone know until we're out of my in-laws' house because I can't let them know while I'm still dependent on them
Hmm.
that I'm not a believer anymore.
Yeah,
Message after message like that.
sure.
And
Well, I
so, yeah.
guess, yeah, I guess the danger is sometimes not physical, but an emotional one. And if you care about people,
Mm-hmm.
and when you were a Christian, I'm sure you cared about people, and you seem to
Yeah.
care about people now,
Yeah.
that doesn't change.
Yeah.
And did you ever go through an angry atheist phase?
There are people who would look at what I'm doing now and say, this is my angry atheist phase. And I'm trying to wrestle through, like, I don't think so.
I don't see it.
So I have another good friend of mine who's still a Christian. We actually we co-taught a Bible study together in high school in the 90s. That's how far back we go together. We got saved independent of one another. We didn't even know one another, but we got saved. We came to Christ around the same time. In the same high school, we met and started a Bible study. So we go back that far. But
Mm.
he recently had a conversation with me, and he said that I was antagonizing Christians. Because if you look at my Facebook page, every other day there's a post where I'm throwing out questions that are meant to cause people to question their faith. And he said, I'm antagonizing Christians. I said, I don't know if I'm antagonizing. I think I'm agitating. I think there's a difference. But I don't think it is the angry atheist in me looking at, but I do think there's something that I see the benefit of agitating, of shaking things up.
Hmm.
But I don't think I can trace it to anger.
Some people call it normalizing
Mm,
atheism, normalizing things that really should be normalized, but in
mhm.
society are looked down upon. There's other
Yeah,
examples too, not just Christianity
yeah.
or religion. So that may be the reason
Mhm.
that's what you're doing. Whereas your friends, you said when they left Christianity, they didn't write a book. They just sort of stopped being Christian.
Yeah.
I guess that's possible too.
Yeah.
What would be your reason for, and I think I asked this question earlier, but uh, your reason for writing the book in terms of beyond your own um, feeling good about yourself,
Mhm.
but you have a message. Who's that message for?
I think it's for people like me, the person that I was in 2014, 2015, when I had the questions but didn't know who to ask.
Hmm.
Didn't know if I could even spark the conversation because I didn't want to cause someone else to doubt unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just in my own closet wrestled with these doubts, and I was depressed. I had friends who asked me like, "Yo, you think you might be depressed?" I'm like, me? No, I was teaching at 4 schools at the time. I was living the dream. My income was higher than it ever was, and my relationships were all good. Yet I still was waking up every day, laying in bed for hours, unmotivated.
Hmm.
And I'm like, me depressed? Why? And I was sort of in denial. And so I think the book is for people who have questions but don't know that they can ask them.
Hmm.
Or I've had people who said to me, you articulated what I didn't have the words to articulate. And I think because I have such a interesting cross discipline from, being in the inner city, being hip hop, yet also being a Christian, yet also being educated, I think I speak enough languages, just speaking about, the vernacular of different people, that I'm able to put things into words that are just helpful for people. And so I think it's a public service for
Mm-hmm.
any and everyone who's got questions.
Good.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I want to read your book.
Please do.
I will.
Please do. Yeah.
I will. I'll be ordering it up any day
Good
now.
stuff. Yeah.
Tell me, how are sales for this book that you've written?
Sales are I want to say they're trickling in because it's almost like it's very taboo.
Mm-hmm.
It's the book is for Christians, and I really do think Christians need to question their faith, but you can't be a good Christian and do that.
That's right. That's right.
And so the people who need to read it have no incentive to do so,
Wow.
other than being, like I said, agitated to want to know. And then I've got these urban apologists who are releasing video after video, giving people the impression that, hey, here's what his book says, and it's a false impression.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have to date sold, somewhere in the area of, I don't even know, somewhere between 300 and 500 copies of the book.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't really checked in the last, month or so.
Well,
But
it was a labor of
yeah.
love, I bet.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Absolutely.
It was a grueling process. I read more in the last year and a half than I did in 4 or 5 years of seminary, which is saying a lot.
Yeah.
And so to put this together, definitely a labor of love. I'm happy just to be having the conversations with people. And
Good.
so, yeah.
Super. Super.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Brady, I really enjoyed this.
I
want to
appreciate you
thank
having me. Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show.
Indeed. Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself now.
Do the same. Hopefully I'll get a chance to have you on the podcast one day.
Maybe. Sounds like
Okay.
fun. All right.
All right.
Take care, mate.
Yep. Bless to
Bye-bye.
you. Yeah.
And that's our show for today. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then hit the like button and subscribe and ring that bell for future notifications. And if you are a self-published author, I would really like to talk to you. Until then, keep on writing and be kind to one another.